What does it take to gain a new customer today? Or more importantly, wow an existing one? How will you manage your workforce in this time of economic uncertainty, when everyone is being asked to do more with less? And how can technology help you succeed now and into the future? I'm Leandro Perez, Vice President and CMO of Salesforce Asia Pacific, and I'm excited to be hosting another Salesforce Executive Conversation, where our executives share their thoughts, perspectives, and experience working with C-suite and other thought leaders across the globe. We've already had so many incredible conversations. If you've missed an episode, you can catch up at sfdc.co/conversations. Today, I'm talking with Executive Leader of Future Forum and Slack SVP, Brian Elliott. Brian's been part of the Slack team for 5 years, previously as VP and GM of Platform. Before that, at Google, he's worked in startups and he was a principal with the Boston Consulting Group. He also has an MBA from Harvard Business School. That all gives Brian an amazing purview for his current focus, the future of work and talent. Welcome, Brian, to Executive Conversations.
Hi, Leandro. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you in person as well, away from San Francisco.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
So let's just start off with quick icebreakers just to get to know you a little bit better. Maybe we'll start all the way back when you were 10. Did you shine anywhere when you were at 10 years old?
10 years old. Hard to remember at this point in time. It's been, 5 years since then. Math was always my subject in school that I was really good at and stuck with. So I was a math geek.
Okay.
So yeah, that was kind of it on that side.
Did that lead to you wanting to be in computing? Maybe that's where this came from?
In college, I was a math major. And that was also equally geeky. But a lot of sort of quant stuff in social sciences, actually.
Wow.
So a lot of it was actually similar to what we do now, which is getting deep in the research side of things, more about understanding how, math and stats leads to human behavior and helps interpret it.
Wow, that's way more than I was thinking when I was little.
At 10, I was nowhere near that. That was, 18, 19, 20 years old. So
now tell me, was there a talent you wished you had? Sports, something else?
Music. I still swear to God, I'm going to pick up the guitar and learn how to play a guitar one of these days, but it still hasn't quite happened.
During COVID, that didn't happen?
No, I've still got to buckle down and actually get some lessons going on it.
Okay. Well, there's still time.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get there.
Now tell me, I know you've got a family as well. I think 2 boys.
Two boys.
Well, two young men.
At this point in time. 21 now. The younger one just turned 21, which is a little scary, and the older one's 22. Out of college already, so my wife and I are empty nesters.
Oh my goodness! So what's harder, being an SVP or being a father?
Oh, being a father by far.
I agree.
Is the
I agree on that. Good answer.
Ups and downs, fantastic challenges along the way, but also the most rewarding thing ever.
It teaches you a lot about management at work as well.
It does. So sometimes managing children is easier, but not always.
Now, talking about what's easier, what tests you in your current role? Is there things that test you the most?
I think it's a lot of it. A lot of what tests me is putting aside conventional wisdom. I've been leading and managing teams myself for 3 decades now, and there's a lot of assumptions that I make because what worked for me 20 years ago should work today, and that's not necessarily true. And I think a lot of the lessons that we built up over the years too were built off of what worked in a very different situation than the one we find ourselves in today. And so a lot of what I have to do is sit there and go, I believe that was true, but I need to listen to my team because they've got some different insights than I grew up with, for sure.
Now, Brian, most folks may not realize, but the commonly accepted approach to work was founded in the factory floor in the 20s and 30s. I think I learned about that in some of your recent podcasts. Now, what did it take? Why did it take a pandemic for us to reevaluate some of these things that we've been doing? Like you said, common wisdom. Change is hard.
Change is hard for everybody, right? And so I think there were a lot of conversations even prior to the pandemic about the world's changing around us, and should we re-examine a lot of the assumptions we make about the fact that work is something that gets done 9 to 5 in an office building. But because we had decades and decades and decades of experience of doing one thing, it was really hard to imagine how we would do something different. And so what happened in March of 2020 globally is we got thrown into a very different situation. People got asked to do things they'd never done before. Right. And even though there was plenty of academic evidence out there that would say 9 to 5, 5 days a week in the office is not necessarily ideal, certainly for everyone, it took shifting our experiences to actually experience it ourselves, to have a lot more openness to what might be possible and what might be able to be different.
So it really took, I guess, the experience for the folks that were making the decisions, would you say,
Absolutely.
to actually...
Absolutely. We actually, in the book, we talk about a lot of the research that we've done, but we also profile a number of companies. Besides Salesforce and Slack, we talk about Genentech, for example, which is a Roche Pharmaceuticals division based in the US. And one of their chief scientists was one of the people that said, look, even though people don't need to be in the labs 5 days a week, I want them in the labs 5 days a week because I believe that's how they're most productive, and I've never seen any evidence otherwise. And that person changed their minds when they went into the pandemic, because what they found out was that people could be pretty productive analyzing data at home as much as in the office place. And so it took the evidence of actually seeing what happened to change that person's mind in particular.
Incredible example. Now, Future Forum is something that you co-founded. What is it? What can companies and executives in APAC gain from it?
So Future Forum is something that's backed by Slack. It's a think tank that helps us define what we think the future of work looks like. Future of work for us, though, is much more about talent. It's actually more here and now than future of work would even sound like. And the reason for that is talent is the basis for competitive advantage. If you look at what's going on in the world around us today, it's not financial capital or physical capital. In fact, if you look at like the Fortune 500, 85% of the enterprise value in the organizations in the Fortune 500 is intellectual property.
Wow.
It's what we create. And that creative juice comes from the talent that we are able to attract, to retain, and importantly, to engage in our pursuit as a business. So what we focus on as Future Forum is what is going to help us better align that talent, to better attract and retain that talent, and what's it take to help make people truly productive and feel like they're truly engaged in their organization and connected.
And that stat you threw out is incredible, 90% being IP. Where can people find out about that? Is there a place? I think you do a survey quite often.
We do a survey. So Future Forum itself does a piece of research called The Pulse. We survey over 10,000 knowledge workers around the globe every quarter. We've been doing this for a bit over 2 years now to get at habits and practices and what's working, what's not, and for whom. And it's a really interesting way to get at why flexibility is important for people, but also how it leads to better business outcomes, how it helps us create more inclusive organizations, in fact, and to get deeper against some of that conventional wisdom to understand what's the right balance point that we want to find in terms of the flexibility that individuals want and the outcomes organizations are trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's some pretty serious research. 10,000 folks, that's not just what you're thinking up in the morning, right?
No,
so it's data
not
backed,
at all,
for
not
sure.
at all. And so, yeah, we've done research on that front. We do it every quarter because that set of comparisons really helps people understand things. We can cut it by country, we can look at different industries, we can look at different verticals, but importantly, we can also look at what's going on across gender, across parents, across race and ethnicity, and the real challenges that different people are facing, and some of the benefits that we can create for those people as well.
Truly useful resource. Now, what are some of the changes you're advocating for in the way we approach work?
The first starting point really is around flexibility. And when we say flexibility, what we don't mean is just how many days a week someone's allowed to work from home. That's what usually gets talked about in the press. The headlines are often painting it out to be a battle between people who want to be full-time in the office and people who want to be fully remote.
Heard that conversation before.
Oh, every week it pops up yet again, right? 80% of people want some form of location flexibility around the globe. That means there's 20% that want to be in an office 5 days a week because they need it, right?
Yes.
Maybe home doesn't work, or maybe they just need that separation physically between their work lives and their home lives. 80% want flexibility, but almost no one wants to be fully remote, about 12% globally. Most people want to come together episodically with their team. But when you ask people why they want it, the answer changes a little bit depending on what level you're at in the organization. Teams really want it as much for relationship building, for social development, for mentorship, as they do for collaboration. And so as we think about how we come back out of this from a location flexibility perspective, what people are looking for is why. Why should it be coming together? And they're looking for, give me opportunities to socialize. Don't dictate the number of days coming back into the office, then pile meetings into those days
Right.
so I'm sitting there on video calls all day long. We know that's not working. But that's the other challenge that we find in the data is we talk so much about location flexibility. We spend no time on time. And time matters more than place. When we ask people about schedule flexibility, 94% of people want some form of schedule flexibility. And what they mean by that is they don't want their 9 to 5, 5-day a week jam-packed full of meetings. And that's become a bigger problem over the past couple of years, right? I'm sure you've experienced it.
Yes.
I certainly have. The half-hour video calls become...
It's the default.
Yeah, exactly. And so it crams more and more meetings onto our calendars. And what happens is, once you start doing that, my core work, the stuff that I have to get done myself, especially for frontline managers who carry a burden of individual work, gets shoved into the early morning hours or after dinner or after the kids are in bed.
Right. It's not productive or healthy for them.
Exactly. And they're probably not at their best either. So when we look at flexibility, we also cut it in a bunch of different ways. Location flexibility has about a 4% boost to productivity for people. And 4% may not sound like a lot, but that's got about an hour and a half gained advantage in productivity on a weekly basis.
Definitely when you say it that way, it's much more tangible.
It's more tangible, it's more beneficial. Look, schedule flexibility. Being able to break that 9 to 5, 5-day-a-week habit has a 29% boost to productivity. And it's understandable. Like, we look at our own calendars and trying to find a 2-hour block of time to get heads down and work done.
Not easy.
It's really hard. So we advocate and actually practice a lot of things that are around schedule flexibility to help people boost productivity, get more focus time during the week. And in fact, between Slack and Salesforce, we've taken some real advances there, right? One of my favorite programs started out at Slack. It was called Maker Week. It was a once a quarter, cancel all your recurring meetings and give people time back to do productive work, but also use some of that time to look at some of those meetings and figure out, do I need to do that meeting every week? If it's a status check, could I do it asynchronously? There's now 32 people in that meeting. It was supposed to be 8. Can't we, trim it back? And spend time cutting back. That was so successful that other parts of Slack picked it up. And then when Salesforce acquired Slack, changed the name a little bit, it's now Async Weeks. And I think about 2/3 of Salesforce are now using Async Weeks on a quarterly basis to help people recharge, but to also help us learn some new habits and practices of how to blend time together, which is really essential, with more asynchronous ways of collaborating to give people heads down focus time when they're at their best.
So you've talked obviously benefits of flexibility for the employee, the individual. What have you discovered through your research? You mentioned a couple things there, but for the company, is there something there you can share?
Biggest one is talent. So at the end of the day, people's expectations have changed dramatically over the past couple of years. 73% of people are open to new job opportunities if their company doesn't give them the flexibility they're looking for.
Wow.
It's second only to compensation and people's consideration. And so if you're not thinking about how you afford people some degree of flexibility, you really risk losing talented people. And even in economic challenging times like we're facing today with the headwinds that a lot of executives are wrestling with, you need your top talent to help you get through it, right? Challenging times demand a lot more flexibility, a lot more agility, and a lot more responsiveness. That top talent is what helps you get out of it. But also it's really essential to how you accelerate coming out of it at the end. So it's really, at the end of the day, flexibility gets you a talent advantage, and we're seeing this play out across industries. Any given industry, financial services likes to get a lot of headlines around this, right? There are companies out there that are being inflexible and they're requiring people to come back 5 days a week. There's also companies in the same industry that are sitting there going, we're going to take a much more flexible approach. And they're not just doing that out of the goodness of their hearts, okay? They're doing it because they're going to cherry pick top talent away.
Database decision, right?
Exactly,
there. Yeah.
exactly. And so flexibility is actually a basis for competition around talent. And when you look at it, if it also yields productivity to an organization, it's a double win.
Yes.
I think the challenge is a lot of executives have a similar mindset that I've grappled with myself, which is, I hear this all the time. There's this concept of, I don't have my finger on the pulse of the organization if they're not in the office.
Can't see it, right?
You can't see it. And technology has actually led to a lot of changes here. If you're not in the tools like Slack, where your employees are actually wrestling through issues, where they're doing the account plan, where they're planning the next marketing program, if you're not in there with them, it's almost like you're not really in the office, right? So that's where the work is happening these days. We're 2 generations of digital natives in the workforce. As more senior executives, I'm Gen X myself, it's taken a little training and a little adoption. When I first joined Slack 5 years ago, I had a lot of new skills to learn myself. But getting in there means that I'm in there with my team in a much more transparent way, seeing the work happen. And I don't have to worry about whether they are clocking in and clocking out because I can see the work itself right there.
So we've brought across some of the experiments that were at Slack now to Salesforce. We've got over 80,000 employees, so large-scale experiment. Can you unpack a few of those for us?
Sure. So one of them that we talked about was Async Weeks, which is once a quarter canceling all of your
Explain async, because people may never have heard this name before.
Actually, the terminology is a little problematic. In Slack, we've got different names for it. The idea basically is we need to train different types of teams on how to do some of our work asynchronously. It's how do you find that balance so that the meeting doesn't become the default solution for how work gets done. So synchronous is meeting live in real time. Asynchronous is what can we do to pass information back and forth through digital tools and the rest of it. So one of the things that we did was, because our Maker Weeks in Slack started out in engineering, when we started doing them with our sales and customer success team, for example, They called it Customer Week because they want their focus to be
Right.
on the customer,
yeah.
right? Externally facing. Let's get rid of the internal meetings that week, though. And so what it took, though, was training people on how do you do some of your meetings that are different types of meetings asynchronously. How do we do a forecasting meeting if I'm not everybody plugged in talking
Right.
about their forecasts? What's the ways in which I collect that information through, CRM, but also through, posted messages, short form video. One of my favorite features in Slack is clips, right? So you can record a 1 minute, 3 minute long
Love those, by the
video
way.
snippet, which is great for just sharing information off of a customer meeting or with your team, the sort of pass down, top down.
No need to type
type of
anything up.
information.
It's very quick. You can do it, right?
Exactly.
I love it.
So learning more asynchronous ways of working is the only way that you get some of that time freed up on your calendar. And what we've also had to do is find ways to invest in the technology to make that happen. One of the other challenges that we've all faced, I think, is, and I've seen this within Slack, Salesforce, and every other organization we work with, is the 30-minute video call becomes the default solution, right? And what happens is, Leandro, you and I need to have a conversation. We can't do it in chat. It's too complicated. It should be a 5-minute conversation, but I go and look on your calendar. I find a half-hour block. It's a week and a half from now. I put it on the calendar. I put a video call on top of it. And what we find ourselves is, instead of a 5-minute conversation we can have right now, a week and a half from now, we'll talk for half an hour and solve the issue.
Because you'll
which is
expand to
horrible.
meet the time, right?
Exactly.
I'd love to chat with Brian.
Average video call goes for 28 minutes. No matter, if it's a 30-minute call, it goes for 28 minutes, and it just works out that way. So Slack huddles are a quick voice-based conversation, voice first. And so, you're available, I'm available. Let's just open up a channel. And it's as quick and easy as a phone call, but it's right there and you've got context. And so it's a quick way to resolve those types of issues. And that's the tap on the shoulder, I think, also that we're all missing.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you allow teams that want to be in sync for certain things to have that quick tap on the shoulder, to have that quick voice-based conversation, because voice works for many things, to share a bit of information and knowledge? And then how do you use things like asynchronous video? How do you use project channels to do more asynchronous work? And finding the balance between those is why having a digital headquarters ends up being so essential.
Yeah, what I love is obviously the ability to rethink how you do work, right? And
Yeah.
it's sometimes, like you said, you just fall into it, right? Before the pandemic, the 30-minute video call was not the default.
That's right.
It's become the default. How do you find, I guess, you get people across the line on some of these things? 'Cause it sounds like a lot of change management there.
The nice part is if executives and individuals within organizations are sort of a little bit at odds about how many days a week they should be in the office, everyone agrees we have a problem with too many meetings. The challenge is, quite often, my meetings are fine. It's all of your meetings that are the
It's not
problem,
my problem.
right? But you have to find a place to start. And so what we usually advocate for is find teams that are willing to experiment in this. And most organizations have people that are doing that. So find a way to experiment with an async week, a no meetings week on your calendar. Try it again. Invest time behind it in terms of what activities do you want people to do and not do, and learn from that. Experiment and iterate with taking different types of meetings and say, how would we do this asynchronously? Or how would we find a way to share that information with everybody else so that FOMO, fear of missing out, isn't what's driving people to attend the meeting?
So Brian, can you give us an example from your team?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorites is our product design and engineering team has the classic Monday morning meeting. And a couple of years ago, that Monday morning meeting, which was to review top projects, see where we stood, and really at the heart of it to resolve conflicts about resources, grew from a 30-person to a 60-person to a 100-person meeting.
Seen that before.
From an hour to a 2-hour meeting, right? Where you're going through a list of projects and saying whether something is on track or not. And the contest became how fast could you say, on track?
It's all good. I'm green.
I'm green. I'm good. And so what we did is said, look, this is clearly inefficient because you've got 100+ people for 2 hours sitting
Think of
there.
the cost of that. Yeah.
Exactly. If you added up the salary behind that, it's ridiculous as an investment. So we said, look, we're going to break this into pieces. We're going to have a process that says by Friday at noon, you have to have all your major projects updated. They update in Jira. You share the updated summary in a Slack channel. And what happens on Monday morning is there's a program manager who goes through it, combs through it, and figures out, besides the 15 people that need to be there in that meeting, who are the 3 to 5 that we're going to add to it to have a discussion about something to really resolve some issues. And so what it did is it shrank down the size of that meeting, made it much more efficient, but still focused on what it needed to focus on, which is issue resolution. And it freed up 100 people's time, right? And so that kind of benefit is really fantastic from an organizational perspective.
And that's like one meeting. Imagine like every meeting across the team and across the whole organization.
Exactly.
It's really incredible.
Exactly.
Now, like, can you give us a case study? Like, who's leading from the front here, showing that power of flexibility? Maybe some of our customers or someone in the industry you've seen?
I think there's a lot of companies in almost every industry that we look at that we can point to that are doing this. From a technology perspective, we profile IBM in the book. That is a 200,000 person plus organization, global in nature, that's actually thought about flexibility as a core competitive advantage from a talent perspective. We talk about Dropbox, a smaller organization that's gone really deep on this issue of schedule flexibility, on how do we blend more limited time together. One of my favorite concepts from them in the book is core collaboration hours, which we use as well. 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. is the time for one-on-ones, team meetings, the all hands, everything else. Everyone thinks it's not possible until you start trying it and doing it and put some discipline behind it. But we also talk about Genentech, pharmaceutical company, and what they've done in terms of how they think about pairing up teams in R&D and their needs versus manufacturing. Royal Bank of Canada and financial services that looks at flexibility again as talent advantage in the financial services industry and wants to basically use it as a way to bring in people that they otherwise might not be able to recruit.
So tell me, obviously, a few of those examples are more office-based, traditional sort of work. What about industries where the people aren't necessarily tied to a desk? Maybe they're at a bank branch or at a retail store. Can you have some examples there?
We do, and it's a big challenge. So we cover, our work in the research covers primarily desk workers, people who are knowledge workers inside of offices. That in the US is about 50% of the workforce, similar here in Australia. Yes. The challenge is there's an entire other group of people that are frontline workers where the challenges are different. The concept of flexibility is still that was really essential. We've done some research with Boston Consulting Group on this that's fantastic, that gets at the fact that what those people are also looking for is a form of flexibility, but it's around schedule flexibility and control. I'll give you an example. What people are looking for is, if I've got a fixed calendar of 8 to 5 days a week, with no ability to swap shifts, it's really hard when I've got a personal issue that says, next Thursday I've got a kid's appointment that I need to take care of. If I have to walk into the back of the store to do it on a whiteboard, it's just not going to work. And what happens is people call in sick, and then the manager has to deal with it. If you can invest in operations and tools and technology to bridge that gap, to make it easier for me to swap a shift with a coworker, not only are you making me happier as an employee, increasing my retention, you're also getting rid of that issue that the store manager is going to have to deal with otherwise, right? So it's better for business again, as well as being better for individuals. And it still comes back to flexibility, just a different form.
So for our C-suite viewers who are, want to take action, they're very inspired by what you're saying, what steps would you recommend to get started and moving in the right direction?
There's two things that I would start with. One is listen. 60% of executives tell us that they are doing their future of work planning with little to no direct input from their employees. And the challenge that we know is that our teams don't look like us. Executives are not representative of the rest of their population, right? We are more often white, we are more often male, we are more often older. And the needs of our organizations, particularly women with children, are much different. In our research, 59% of working moms want to work from the office 2 days a week or less. We've seen women have to dial down their careers over the past year, even post-pandemic. And so understanding the needs of people across race and ethnicity, different abilities, globally, gender, parenting, is really important. And you're not going to get that purely out of surveys. You need to sit and understand what people are going through. So that's one aspect of it. The second is we really need to shift our mindset from attendance to outcomes. It's probably the most essential thing in all of this. If we are rewarding people on the basis of who is showing up, John shows up early, John stays late, the risk that we run is we're again rewarding people who are showing up most often, which more often is white, male, older, non-caregivers. If we're rewarding John because he crushed his Q2 goals and he also crushed his Q1 goals, fantastic, that's the right solution. Outcomes-based management is what everyone is looking for. It helps level the playing field across all of the different diverse groups that we know are essential to creating really competitive companies. But it also yields better outcomes, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we should be striving for as organizations. It's a great aligning force. So listen to your organizations and shift from an attendance mindset to an outcomes-driven mindset.
Love that. And I know we've shared a lot today, but there's also something you've written down here. I think I want to give an example here. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the book.
The book?
Yeah.
So Sheila Subramanian and Helen Cupp, who are my two wonderful co-founders and co-authors, and I wrote a book. It's called How the Future Works, which is a bit of an audacious title. But it actually is very practical and tactical. It's a tactical playbook for how you can actually take advantage of these issues around flexibility to build higher productivity, better outcome teams that are more inclusive, and importantly, that are actually more connected with one another. So you can pick it up, you can go through the tactics in it. There's actually playbooks and content in it that you can adapt today. The future basically, there's a William Gibson phrase, which essentially is, the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed, right? So if you want to get a talent advantage, then you need to start adopting some new habits and practices. And that's what this is intended
The
to
playbook, and you had some great references there as well. I think
Yeah.
Mark Benioff, Stuart Butterfield, a few
Exactly.
few famous folks there.
Stuart did the foreword to it. There's actually some great storytelling from Stuart. Mark Benioff wrote a wonderful blurb for us on it. And so, and it pulls together habits and practices across companies that are in a range of different industries. So this doesn't feel like it's only a tech thing.
I love it. So thank you for your copy as well. I got a signed copy, folks, and
You did.
also for joining us today, Brian. Truly incredible.
Leandro, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
My 3 takeaways for today. Number 1, flexibility isn't just an attraction and retention tool. It improves productivity, inclusivity, and connection. Number 2, instead of top-down thinking and policies, try listening and being open-minded to new approaches towards work. And number 3, could you be more asynchronous? Look at your recurring meetings and ways of working. Now, if you want to catch up on the chats we've had so far with some of the most interesting and valued executives in our ecosystem, visit sfdc.co/conversations. We are covering the ideas and concepts that are top of mind for executives and leaders within business to share and inspire you to a success from anywhere approach to your business and your customers. So far, we've covered, amongst other things, balancing the customer experience versus the employee experience, the cookieless future, transforming customer service, and today, the power of flexible work. Thank you for tuning in to our executive conversations. See you next time. And they're like,
Exactly.
such a tough life, Leandro.
That's
I'm like,
horrible.
"Oh,
That's
my
horrible. We feel so sorry for you. Here's a tiny little violin. Should already have the benefit of having all that information collected.
What was that?
That was a train. It's a lovely train. Was that a boat?
I don't know what that was. Was it a boat? I think it probably was. We need to be 61 floors up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.